In 1949, in the quiet village of Lexfeld, Germany, a 6-year-old girl named Waltraud was paired with an American pen pal through a Campfire Girls program. She carefully wrote a letter to someone she'd never met. Her name was Jeanie, and she lived in a small town across the ocean, Cleburne, Texas. The letter arrived in Texas, wrapped in careful handwriting and hope. It had crossed an ocean from a small town in post-war Germany where Waltraud wrote with quiet courage and curiosity. Inside were questions for a girl she'd never met. In Cleburne, Jeanie opened up the envelope and discovered the start of something rare, a friendship that would last a lifetime. On April 11, 1949, 6-year-old Waltraud sat down to write her very first letter to a girl across the ocean. With help from her English teacher in Lexfield, she translated her thoughts into a language she hadn't yet learned. "She's almost hopping with joy," the teacher wrote on her behalf. "So proud to have an American pen pal." This was the first line in a friendship that would stretch across continents and decades. Though a world apart, both girls grew up near the railroad. In Germany, Waltraud lived in an apartment above the local train station where her mother worked. Her father, once employed by the railway, was often unable to work after a wartime injury. In Texas, Jeannie's father worked for the Santa Fe line. It was a small connection, just a coincidence really, but the friendship that grew between their daughters would go on to span more than miles of track. There was laughter, too. "Your dolly is wetting its pants," Waltraud wrote. "It's just like my little sister." Even in hardship, she held on to joy. Waltraud's family often struggled to afford basic needs like clothing. Jeannie's family began sending packages, gently used clothes their children had outgrown, and toys for Waltraud and her sister Karen. Her mother, Ellie, also wrote, "It is glorious," she said, "to turn tears into smiles and sadness into gladness." Even across language and distance, kindness could be understood. And then suddenly, in 1953, the letters stopped. No one knows why. Time goes by. The world moves on, but the memory of friendship never fades for Jeanie or Waltraud. 2006, Lexfeld, Germany. Jeanie traveled to Germany to visit a friend near Cologne. She brought with her a box of old letters, faded envelopes, and folded memories from a girl named Waltraud. With only a postcard of the church tower and a name of a small village, Jeanie drove to Lexfeld. In the cemetery behind the church, Jeanie wandered amongst the headstones, searching for Waltraud's family name. She met a woman tending a grave and asked, "Do you know Waltraud?" The woman didn't, but she knew Waltraud's sister, Karen. By chance, she had Karen's address and gave it to Jeanie. Jeanie went there and left a handwritten note on the doorstep, her heart pounding. What do you write after 50 years of silence? She simply said who she was, where she was from, and that she so very much hoped that Waltraud would remember her. Waltraud was at home when the phone rang. It was her sister, Karen, calling with a strange question. "Do you remember Jeanie Johnson from Texas?" Waltraud froze. She hadn't heard that name in over 50 years, and then the tears came. Karen had found the note that Jeanie had left on her doorstep and passed along the message. Jeanie had found Waltraud. Soon the letters began to fly between Germany and the States once again, just like before, and then letter after letter, and then finally, visits. Jeanie didn't speak German. Waltraud did not speak English, but that didn't stop them. Friends, children, and grandchildren helped them translate their letters. Sometimes the grammar was off or a sentence didn't quite make it through, but the meaning always did. They wrote about their lives, their families, and the little things, like baking, gardening, grandchildren, and the weather. When Jeanie was ill, Waltraud sent flowers. And in nearly every letter, they looked ahead to the next visit, saving pennies and planning for the long flight to see each other again. From a single letter in 1949 to this moment, decades later, side by side, they crossed borders, bridged languages, and carried each other through distance, change, and time. What began as a simple act of kindness grew into a lifelong friendship. Not perfect, not always easy, but true and endearing. I'd like to send a very heartfelt thank you to Jeanie Johnson Bridges and the family of Waltraud Luzert Riemann. Jeanie and Waltraud's letters are currently being preserved at the Leyland Museum of History in Cleburne, Texas.